Good afternoon. My name is Jan Roller, and I'm president of the board of the City Club of Cleveland, the organization providing the nation's longest continuous civic dialogue and free speech forum. Those of us in Cleveland love our city and region. We see its natural and human-made riches, from our beautiful Lake Erie and emerald necklace of metro parks to its great institutions and universities and our well-laid public square. Others, though, see our foreclosed houses, our vacant lots, abandoned buildings, and call us part of the Rust Belt. Fortunately, people with vision, like our speaker today, Storm Cunningham, know the value of older cities, such as Cleveland. In his new book, Re-Wealth, and I'll hold it up here for everyone to see, he tells his readers that wealth creation is primarily based on asset renewal. Mr. Cunningham will be signing the book at the end of our forum if you'd like to get a copy of it. Mr. Cunningham writes words such as conservation, sustainability, and green are often dividing people, or they're simply boring. He says you can look around our planet, and if you can say that this is a situation you'd honestly like to sustain, you're just not paying attention. He says, I'm for restoring this mess. Mr. Cunningham has been described as a revitalization facilitator. He addresses all aspects of renewal: natural and cultural resources, urban and rural communities, industrialized and lesser developed countries. He speaks and consults on a regular basis with federal agencies, Fortune 500 companies, and academic institutions. From 1996 to 2002, he was Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Construction Specifications Institute, an association of 18,000 architects, engineers, contractors, and manufacturers. He is a former Green Beret scuba medic. In addition to his speaking and writing, Mr. Cunningham is CEO of Resolution Fund, LLC, a Washington, D.C. company that helps communities, counties, tribes, regions, and nations renew their economy, their natural resources, and quality of life. He is also founder of Revitalization Institute, a nonprofit academy based in Toronto, Canada, for community renewal and natural resource restoration. Mr. Cunningham, welcome to the City Club of Cleveland.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon. My thanks to the City Club for honoring me with this invitation to speak in one of the nation's leading and most historic public venues. I'd also like to very specifically thank Jonathan Holyfield down here, President and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Cleveland, because he's the one who got me here. In fact, he originally got me up to Buffalo years ago when he was up there, so he drags me everywhere he goes. And many thanks to Laura Steinberg, who has helped facilitate this whole City Club activity. And Jonathan's the one who brought me to the attention of Jim Foster here, so thank you very much for following through on that. Jonathan's a real restoration economy leader, so if you're looking for some restoration, revitalization, that guy knows something about it. I'm going to have to talk fast, because I've only got 30 minutes here to solve all the problems of local, national, and global scopes. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going to launch into it right now. In 1920, Franklin Delano Roosevelt spoke here at the City Club of Cleveland. But it was Teddy Roosevelt who spoke here 6 years earlier in 1914, from whom I wish to quote. Now, Teddy said, "The nation behaves well if it treats the natural resources as assets which it must turn over to the next generation, increased in value." Now, until you get to that word increased, it sounded like kind of your standard call for let's be better stewards of the world, let's leave something for the kids. But that's not what he said, is it? He said increased. He said each generation needs to leave the world healthier, wealthier, more beautiful than how they inherited it. That's a totally different concept. I mean, there's a big difference between not damaging something and restoring something. Today, Teddy was obviously way ahead of his time, since our nation and the world in general has been grievously depleted, polluted, damaged in many different ways in the intervening years. That was almost exactly a century ago, next year. But now Teddy's time has come, and a restoration economy is gloriously blooming, not just in this country, but all around the world. Now, you might be wondering, how the heck can he say that? Given that we're in the throes of a national and to a lesser degree global financial crisis. The answer is found in many of our older cities. They're kind of a window on the future of our national policy, and Cleveland is fast becoming one of them. After all, communities are where most of the social and economic innovations have traditionally taken place. Federal governments adopt them later on, but the innovation takes place here in the communities. For instance, most communities have known for at least 10 years, some of them for centuries, that their revitalized future is going to have to be based primarily on renewing the assets they already have. That's as opposed to sprawl, compulsively developing more and more of what few people really want more of. Now, thanks in part to this global financial crisis, national policy is actually starting to catch up with the cities by focusing primarily on asset renewal rather than asset creation. In other words, better assets rather than simply more assets. On February 10th in Fort Myers, Florida, President Obama told us that the days of constant sprawl are over. Now, that's really just another way of saying that the days of restoration and revitalization are here. If you're not going to sprawl, the only other option you have is to renew what you've already got. On May 3rd of this year, author Paul Hawken was addressing a commencement exercise for the University of Portland. Here's what he said. If you look at the science about what is happening on Earth and aren't pessimistic, you don't understand data. But if you meet with the people who are working to restore this world and the lives of the poor, and you aren't optimistic, you haven't got a pulse. My remarks here today will all be related to this global trend towards restoration and revitalization. I'm specifically going to address three questions that are on the minds of both business and public leaders all around the country. Here's the first question. How can communities like Cleveland revitalize themselves out of their crisis when the whole country is in crisis, making money even harder to find than ever? Second question, how can our federal government at least double the revitalizing impact of that $787 billion economic stimulus package, most of which has yet to be awarded? And the third question, how can real estate investors and redevelopers, people who actually do these restorative projects, how can they predict in which communities revitalization is about to happen so their projects will benefit from a rising local economy? So, those are the three questions. Let me get back to the first one now. How can cities like Cleveland revitalize themselves when the whole country is in crisis at the moment? To answer that, I have to start by confessing that my 2002 book, The Restoration Economy, is missing something crucially important. It documented for the first time all of the many industries and disciplines that are restoring the various natural and built assets of our planet, and which together now comprise a global restoration economy that runs somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 trillion a year. The restoration economy was thus, documenting all the types of restorative projects, the ingredients of renewal, but it didn't have a recipe for reliably turning those ingredients into revitalization. And that's something totally different. Creating rapid, resilient renewal in a community isn't just a matter of doing a bunch of projects. And revitalization is what the communities really want. Now, I spent 6 years researching the answer to that question. McGraw-Hill has now published the results of that 6 years of research in the new book, Rewealth. And I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version of it right now because it's central to answering those three questions.